Well, welcome everybody to today's evening. My name is Nisha, and I'm from the marketing team here. So a lot of new faces we actually have not seen on our webinar so far before. So today we're doing something a little bit different. We're talking about financial success and what that means, for us as plan and we plan for kids. So with me today, we have special guests. So first one next to me is Timothy Ho, from the founder of Dollars and Cents, one of the founding members within the personal finance space, I would say probably in Singapore, been around for probably 10 years now.
Yeah, 10 years, I think.
Welcome to
Thanks.
our session in the webinar. And next we have Kelvin Learns Investing. Probably I would say one of the more popular YouTubers in Singapore, also one of the very pioneers.
I thought number one. No, number one.
I think probably maybe in terms of followers and then views and things like that, but his channel has grown significantly over the 2 years. And for me, I'm a big fan, so really welcome to our webinar here as well. And the furthest from me is Samantha. So she is our Chief Business Officer. So she runs new businesses as well as operations. So, and all of these guests here today, they're parents themselves as well. Fun facts. So why don't you, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, your background, and how many kids have you got?
Okay, I'll start first. I'm Timothy, so I'm one of the co-founders of Dollars and Cents. So I've been doing it full-time for about 8 years, so that's since 2015. And during this period of 8 years, me and my wife, we also have 3 kids, so 3 girls. They are age 6, 4, and myself. So we have 3 kids, so age 6, 4, and 1 this year. So yeah, still very much in the very tiring and somewhat expensive phase of life.
All right, cool. And Kelvin?
So I'm Kelvin from Kelvin Learns Investing. And unlike what she said, I'm not the top one. If you say that, the real top ones will come after me. So I basically run a YouTube channel where I talk about anything related to money, mostly because I like money. So I talk about investing, saving, CPF, SRS, those kind of stuff. So as for my kid is 2 years old, about the same age as my YouTube channel. So they were born around the same age, same year, during the COVID period. Right now, is not that tiring, but as compared to when during the early days, we have to wake up every 3 hours to feed the kid milk. Now it's not that bad. But it's still expensive, right?
It's expensive. We'll get more expensive.
Oh,
don't worry.
All right. So as Nisha mentioned, I'm the Chief Business Officer at Syfe, and my background is also in investing. So I started in Morgan Stanley, and I was in a large hedge fund on the investment side for just over a decade before Syfe. So this is also a topic which is close to my heart, and I have 2 daughters, a little bit in between these ages. So, and I'm also in the numbers in between both of you. So I have one who is soon to be 1-year-old, and a 3-year-old, well, soon to be 3-year-old as well. So definitely extremely tiring, extremely expensive. But I think also even going to get more expensive as they go a little bit older and both start going to school, etc. But definitely keeps you on your toes and busy.
Cool. All right. Yeah. So before we deep dive into like the topics that we've had today, right? So we've actually prepared a little something in terms of like the poll for the audience to kick things off, right? So the first one is, how much do you think it costs to actually raise a child in Singapore per child?
Oh.
Let's maybe give some time for the audience to answer. But then, what do you guys think now that you have a bit of first-hand experience?
Should we say first? Maybe we say.
You can say first. You can say first and then see.
I would say that I think most likely people will vote between 300 to 500,000. Personally, I think the average cost and this is on a conservative side, I think it's about 200 to 250,000. But if you want a little bit more, then it will be 300,000. And excluding going overseas for tertiary studies, that one would be double easily if you going US or UK to study.
Same for my thoughts. It's about 200 to 300.
Yeah.
If you include uni fee, you'll be around 300 to 500. But I have to add on something like, it's like, this is assuming that the kid is healthy and whatnot, right? If the kid is like falling sick every other week, if the kid has a bit of delay, I'm what is it called, autism, or basically is not a perfectly healthy kid lah, that you have to spend a lot more money to take care of the kid. In that case, you can see the cost easily double or even triple, and it will be quite tough lah, I feel.
Yeah, all right, let's maybe review the poll results.
We don't discourage the birth rate. The more we say, the lower the birth rate is gonna be.
All right, so quite a lot of mixes right here. So somewhere between 300, 500, yes. And some people also think that it's all a way up to $1 million. Cool, very interesting. So, I think having kids especially in Singapore can get super, super expensive. And I think like when parents think about, even before having a child, and let alone like, planning for their education and their life, right? It's quite a lot to take on as a parent. And I do think that it's very, very important for parents to, think about it, or at least like start somewhere, right? So maybe if we can just start things off, I think financial success also means very different for everyone. So, maybe first question to you first, Tim, around financial success. I know that you've probably written a lot of content on dollars and cents around this and what it means, but then as a parent, right, in that context, what does this mean for you?
I think financial success as a parent, I think it can be quite personal, and it could differ from each parent. Like for me, I think three things I care about. The first is obviously to provide for my kids as they're growing up, all the way until they're adult and they start working, right? So I think as a parent, it is definitely something you want to do. You want to provide for their needs. You want to provide for some of their wants, as long as it's not too extravagant. And I think also for me personally, I think it's important to not just think about providing for their needs because you're working, but more importantly, if you are one day not around or not able to work. So what I'm talking about is that, things in life don't go your way, and, insurance, that's where insurance is so important. I think one of the things, or my experience when I became a dad, when I had my first daughter, was that I don't know whether I'm pessimistic, but I just started thinking a lot about, oh no, what happens if one day something happens to me and then they don't have money and stuff like that. So I started obviously thinking about insurance, because I felt like it was very important that I myself have that comfort of mind, that peace of mind, to know that even if something happens to me, my family, at least financially speaking, would still be okay. So I think that's one thing that's very important for me. I think the other things that I also care about is also about like teaching them the value of money, right? So I think we want our kids to grow up knowing that, having a comfortable life, but I think it's also important for them to know what money means, why money is important, that money is not just infinite, so that's also something I want to like impart, that financial literacy. I guess, it's part of my job also to impart that financial literacy to my kids. And then the last thing for me is, as a parent, is I just don't want to be a financial burden for them when I'm older, right? Because I think we already know the cost of living in Singapore or in many other developed countries is quite high. And imagine if next time your kids are older, they need to buy their own house, but they also have to worry about financially supporting their parents. I think that makes it even more difficult for them. So I just hope that by the time I retire and they're adults, I don't need their money and I can retire properly on my own, which is I think what we all want to do also.
Yeah. So maybe just exploring that last point a little bit, right? So in terms of like, because there's so many kind of goals and priorities, right? So as a parent, should you prioritize yourself first, your own retirement goals, or your kids? Because I think a lot of times it's like, you want best education, like top notch for your kids, and having like whatever that they kind of deserve there, right? So, but then like, how do you balance that with your own goals?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think, once you have kids, the expenses go up so much more quickly than you expect, right? And in the past, I used to be able to save this amount of money and I can invest, and then suddenly it becomes harder. I think one thing I try to do today is that I always say, right, if you want to spend more on your kids, there's a lot of ways you can do so, right? There's no limit to how much you can spend on your kids, right? So I try to make it a point to always do something for myself and my wife when it comes to our long-term retirement plan, right? So no matter how much or how expensive things are, I want to invest a certain amount of money each month, each year, my bonus or whatever into my own retirement, right? It can be as simple as top up CPF, right? So you put so that it can compound. Even if you can't invest, you can still top up your CPF, right? So I think we have to do something for ourselves in terms of our retirement. I think too many parents, honestly, too many parents, like perhaps, sometimes it's very easy to consider your current needs, you want to spend on your kids without thinking about your future needs as a parent, because you're going to be older one day as well.
Yeah, so there's this report that I saw that parents tend to spend more on their kids than on themselves. And this trend, right, it doesn't matter whether you are from a not that rich background versus a rich background. The richer you are, the more that you will spend on your kids, right? So it's not a constant thing also. So so that's why I think it's important to balance what you need versus what your kid need/want. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, right, you are basically a pillar of the whole family. If you're not taking care of yourself, then the whole family would suffer as a result of the entire thing.
Do you have a different view?
I think some definitely some very good points, right? And I would maybe just add on that to say that I think in my perspective, it's important to segregate, how you think and be structured a little bit in how you think about, okay, this is X amount I need for my retirement, plan ahead. This is X amount which I may need for, my child's education or other needs that they may have, rainy day fund, etc. And being able to think about that in terms of, okay, these are the various buckets, and planning whatever that's monthly, I should put away this amount. This is then how much I have to spend versus, invest, right? And being structured about that, and whether that's for your own goals or for your child's goals, right? But thinking through that, and obviously as early as possible.
Do you really have goals? As in, like, is it practical for parents to actually set them up? Because, I think it's balancing like expenses as well as like goals in the future. Do you have any views there?
I think it's important. Like, one of the things I realized is that your investment goals, you will have a lot of different investment goals, like what Samantha say, right? So you would have that long-term retirement. I want to retire by 65 or 55 as well. That could be one goal. You could have other investment goals as well. So you might, be intending to upgrade to a private property or a second property in 5 to 10 years. So you also have to save or invest towards that goal without compromising your retirement plan. And then obviously when you have kids, you might have an education goal as well, or a certain sum of money that you hope to accumulate by the time they are 18 or 19 years old, so that you can afford that tertiary education for them. It's not that you have to. I think it's also okay for your kids to take a education loan if they want to or if they need to, because they can also be responsible for paying off their own loans. But I think as parents, if you want that goal, then we have to plan towards it, because the money is not going to be there suddenly, if you're talking about a sum of $100,000 out of nowhere. So I think, we should have investment goals, and that's important.
For me, my view is slightly different. Because for me, I don't invest separately for my kid. Instead, I take my kids' umbrella
into Calvin's stock.
No, not into my pocket. I use it to buy their milk.
Okay.
The reason is because I am already managing like my own accounts, my wife's account, my parents' account. Hopefully I'm still earning money. And I feel like it will be an extra burden to add one more account. It's like I have to fork out additional money to pump into that. But instead I can just put it in my own portfolio and just do it my own way, while not having to segregate the whole thing and make it very messy. But with that being said, right now I'm investing with a more clearer picture in mind. Like last time, it's just to try to get rich as fast as possible. Now it's more like I need to make sure that this money is still there for my old age, and also for my kid whenever my kid needs it eventually. So as for saving for the kids' education, my view is same as Timothy. It's an optional thing, to be frank. If you can afford it, then sure, you give your kids that leg up in life later on. Because I know that some people, like, even if you take a loan, you will still have to pay back. You have to pay back within like 2 years, 3 years. They will take out that entire amount of money that could have been used for investing. But because you help your kid to save earlier in life, your kid don't have to save, don't have to like pay back the loan for the 1 to 3 years. So is it good? Yes, it's good. But I think it's an optional thing. The kid can just work for himself or herself, even if you don't help her pay for the tuition loan.
I think that, I think obviously it's definitely an optional thing, right? I think that but what tends to happen is that the longer you wait and the closer it becomes, the bigger sum it becomes, and the more daunting, right, some of these expenses and some of these options, right, become, right, versus if you do take that view, like, okay, I can, and if you can, right, you put some, aside every month, right? I think if you look at obviously, as we all know, right, the power of compounding and regular investing, right, and like you do in your own portfolio, right? If you put $1,000 away every month and you do that for 18 years, that becomes if you look at historical returns of a globally diversified portfolio or S&P, etc., that can become upwards of $600,000, right? So the early decisions you can make now can obviously impact significantly, right? And that obviously can be going towards, your retirement or, a goal that you have specifically, for your children, right? So that's a little bit how I think about it.
Can I just say, I don't know if parents out there think the same way as I do, but you can always invest for your kids today for their future education. And then when they turn 18 or 19,
you can decide.
You can decide at that point in time still, right? They can still take an education loan. That's not out of the picture,
Exactly.
Maybe that money can go to my retirement, So I just want to say I don't know if anyone else thinks that way, because after all, the investment will be under our name. Yeah, right. So I hope my kids don't watch this next time I grow up.
I mean, the audience, you can feel free to share in your comments here as well. We'll discuss it. And if you have, any particular questions for any of our panelists, we'll kind of pick them up as we go along here.
This is a bit of unpopular opinion. I feel like the other reason for not saving up for the kids' education, or rather not letting your kid know about this whole fund exists, right? Is so that the kid can
that's optional. That's optional.
Can work hard. Because there's this viral quote, right? Hard times creates strong men. A strong man creates good times. But if you give them a good time, will create weak men. This kind of mentality. So that's why that's why there's a saying that wealth doesn't pass through 3 generations, it will be used up by then. Because if you give your kids this leg up, there might chance that this might backfire in the sense that they feel that money, my dad can afford this, why should I work hard? So it's a good and bad thing to give your kids. So but then I have to boil that back down to what you are teaching your kids earlier on in life, and that money is not infinite.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really interesting viewpoint. So maybe if I can, if for, I guess, parents that have maybe already started investing or, maybe having some exposure to some tools. So what would be kind of like, investment products you invest in ETFs, or like what kind of things, or is it more like insurance plans that can also be an option?
I think for me personally, because investing for your kids' education 20 years from now, which quite similar to, let's say, it's quite similar to planning for your own retirement, that there is enough time horizon to actually invest. So what you really want is that if you are not intending to, if not like Kelvin, who can manage money so actively, you might want to have a diversified portfolio that, gives you exposure to different geographical region, and to just have a long-term view towards it, right? And you don't necessarily want to be actively managing that fund, because you won't have a lot of time, or you may not have the expertise. Not everyone can be like Kelvin, right? So no, it's true, right? A lot of us are just better off earning the market returns and getting it over the long term. So I think that's one consideration. That's what I do for myself as well as for my kids. I do obviously have an active portfolio where I invest in stocks and certain ETFs that I believe in, but that doesn't mean I don't have my own robo portfolios that is also having a long-term view as well. It's not just one over the other, right? So I like to have the best of both worlds, I call it.
Yeah, then just to add on to what you say, other than investing, you also have to care about insurance part, because while investing can grow your money, if anything happens to you, that entire money is basically worthless. So that's why the insurance portion is there to back up in case anything happens. So that's what whenever you go for financial planning, they will look at both sides, investing and the insurance part of it.
So I would say, yeah, I totally agree with the points raised, right? But if you do, obviously, and I also have my, globally diversified portfolios, right, which I invest for the long term, and my own active stock portfolio, which is, not doing as well as those at the moment, although recovered somewhat. But I think it is really, when you do invest, for your children, the tools you want to use, right? And you could think of it similar, as you said, right, to long-term planning, etc. They really should be ones which are not kind of taking any, you're not being overly exposed to any particular risk, right? That could lead to this sum of money being worth a lot less when when you actually need it, right? So taking that more passive, diversified view is definitely very important, right? And we recently launched a product, Syfe for Kids, along these veins, to help parents with tools to invest more actively for their children. And when I say actively, I mean proactively, not actively in terms of in the markets, and to help frame how you should think about investing for the long term. So for instance, if you're investing for your child now in 10 years or 18 years, going for an equity 100 portfolio, for instance, that can be of a higher risk, but offer you a higher return over a long period of time. And some of this, the idea for this also became because there was, myself and a number of our employees who have children, where we would get ang paos for our kids, gifts for our kids from maybe their grandparents for their birthdays, etc. And we would put a lot of money, or this money into their portfolios, and we were seeing that this was happening across our user base as well, right? So people would name their portfolios the names of their children, or some other quite interesting ones around their goals, etc. And so in essence, we thought that this was actually a good way to share what other parents are doing for their children, right? And so, for myself, for instance, I put all of their red packets into their own Syfe portfolios. They each have a couple of portfolios actually, and that I hope obviously will grow over time, and that they can also help that to teach them about the value of compounding and investing, because they can see those portfolios in their names and see what it can grow over time. And I was recalling when I was thinking back at this of my childhood, when actually I had a POSB account in Singapore, and I would just get the book, where every time you would deposit money at the ATM or at a bank account, and you would see how much your balance would go up, etc. And I remember my mom showing me this like every year, okay, this is what your red packets were, this is what you got. And obviously back then, you hardly earned any interest. These are all nothing, right?
Something like that.
But so it's very different. I think now, if I had invested that money back then, right, what it could obviously be worth today, right? And even if it's small amounts of money, they obviously all add up and can compound over time, right? And I think that's something that can be quite powerful for children and parents alike.
Yeah, I agree with Samantha. Everything you said is my experience actually, right? So when you talk about like the red packets that our kids get from their grandparents or their relatives, typically it comes in that lump sum, right? So you don't get red packets regularly every month, right? So then if you were to just invest in stocks, then you have to like save up all this money before you can make a stock investment, right? If you were to commit into an investment plans that require you to pay $300 every month, then that red packets don't come in every month at $300. So one thing I really like is just that flexibility of just being able to put in the money whenever we get the red packet. So it's easy for us to do that. And I think with regards to, I also grew up looking at my POSB savings account and, that $2.60 interest you get once a year, right? Because it's almost nothing. But it actually taught me a lesson, right? So my mom was actually explaining to me like, okay, because you put in money, the bank give you interest. So that $2.60, that was not our money. The bank gave it to us. The idea of your money can grow. Of course, at 0.05%, that's never going to grow to anything. But I think back then we have a lot less investment solutions, right? So short of doing that, my mom would have to invest into individual stocks, which she doesn't have the knowledge to actually invest properly, right? But today we have so much more solutions that can help parents to start investing from when the kids are young, without actually having to know all these stocks or know how to read the markets like the experts know how to do. So I think it's so much easier these days.
Not only that, like last time there was all this trading fee of like 20 plus. Now with like
$30, can't even.
Yeah, but
Still,
now
still in some places, Kevin,
It's still there.
still there.
You lose money when you invest.
so but now with like robo-advisors, like fractional trading, you can start with like just $1, that kind. I think now it's a lot more accessible. Plus all these, I think the knowledge sharing is a lot more compared as to last time, because last time we don't have internet. so I think everything has become a lot easier to do and I think there's not much excuse not to do it anymore. So yeah.
I feel like we shouldn't dismiss the idea of what it means to our children in the future as well, right? So our kids are all quite young still, but imagine when they reach the age of a teenager and they start understanding this concept to have a portfolio that they know that it's under their name, right? And where's the money coming from? Oh, the money is coming from the savings that they've accumulated since they were a baby, right? And how it has grown because of the investment returns compounded. I think that kind of lessons act as a very good it's like the first investment lessons that they can get from their parents.
I can imagine kids starting to compare their portfolio during the primary school days.
Nowadays they are starting
That's definitely gonna happen.
Do they still have these like POSB book things anymore? They don't really do.
I think not
like,
a book.
I mean,
Yeah.
POSB doesn't exist anymore, no? Now it's DBS book.
DBS and POSB, but not the book. But so it's all online now. So online might be a bit harder for them even sometimes to see the thing, right? Yeah.
That would be very digitized now, right? So like showing on the app
Yes.
and the interest and things like that. So now that we've touched a little bit on like, financial literacy and passing that on to your children, right? So maybe besides just showing compounded interest and things like that, any other kind of like lessons that you think are important to kind of pass down, or any maybe techniques, especially now that you have kids at different ages, I think
my girl is going to primary 1 next year. So that's where she will start having to have pocket money to buy food in school. And I think one of the things I'm starting to realize is that kids don't really, at this age, they don't really have a sense of money, how much something is, right? So recently, we've been trying to proactively teach our kids how to look at price tag, try to understand price tag. We went to Japan and I was explaining to her why in Japan, everything looks like $10,000 or $1,000, right? So I tried to explain to her, $1,000 Japanese yen is about $10 Sing. So just cover the 20 at the end, right? So she understands, right? So there was a time when I think it was a toy or something, right? So she wanted to buy it. Obviously, I didn't want her to buy it. So I say, it's a bit expensive. So she asked me, is $10 expensive? Because it's $10. Then I tried to explain to her, it's like 2 Happy Meals. You can buy 2 Happy Meals with that $10, right? So, there is you have to kind of like compare it to something that they can relate to. And I think that's what I'm trying to do. Because they need to learn these things, I think.
For this one, okay, obviously my kid is still too young, but this is a lesson that I learned from Mr. Lu lah. Shout out to Mr. Lu.
I'm 6'5".
So what he did was that he has 3 kids, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
What he does is he has this jar where the kids have sort of a competition to see who can save the most money. And eventually when the jar is full, they can use it to buy whatever they want lah. So I think this sort of teach the kids on how to save and the value of money later on. Yeah.
Pick the jar, top up one as CPF account. Yes,
I think that maybe just my kids are definitely too young for that as well, and I'm not looking forward to the age where you have to start to teach them these things, but I think one important aspect, and I think what Kelvin you touched upon in terms of making sure your kids are resilient, that even if they think that they have this amount of hong pao saved for them, that they're not, they still need to work in life and work hard. I think that's a very important aspect to teach, right? And that's kind of related to money and investing and finances, that they have to understand that there is you do something and you get something, you have to work hard for the things that you want in life. And I think that's something that I think is very important, to start as well young, right? That they need to always do their best, and that they see that you are, you're getting this because you're working hard, and that things are not coming for free, right? Or the money does not grow on trees aspect, right?
Or
Okay.
you can even teach your kids about investing, right? Like,
Yeah,
if your kids
you
save
can
this amount, you can give
top
this
up.
amount of interest to them. Then you take half of it out. This time the market crashes.
Once in a while it goes down,
Yeah.
that's life.
Yeah, that's life. Just kidding.
All right, I think maybe it's time for us to pause and see if there's any questions online. All right, cool. So the question is, do you think investing in VT or VWRA will be good enough for your child over the long term?
Yeah, the same, right? But I believe two of them are the same lah. So this is based on the belief that the entire world will progress as a whole lah. So because of technological advances, the productivity will go up, and because of that, assuming there's no war, no one starts the war, I feel like this will be good enough, because you are just basically betting that the entire world will progress as a whole. This whole humankind thing will progress. So this is a good enough for the core part of your portfolio. Obviously, if you want higher returns, you can add in some satellite at the side, add in 10-20% at the side. But that involves a lot more active investing, which I think not many people have the ability or the time to do so lah. So just VWRA, I feel like it's good enough for most people.
Okay. All right, next question is around insurance endowment. So that as a plan, is it the best way to invest in kids' education, or do we think that there's other ways to do it as well? So these are, I guess, I'm assuming like financial advisors' plans.
I mean, definitely there are other ways, right? So you can always have a DIY portfolio on your own, which means you invest actively on individual stocks on ETF on your own. You can invest through a robo portfolio that basically gives you exposure to the market return or whatever you choose in that portfolio as well. So these are definitely other ways. I think in terms of whether there is any one best ways, I feel it really just depends on your preference, right? So when I had my my first girl, I started investing in stocks actively for her, right? And then after a while, I felt that that was not something I really wanted to do. So I still do it for myself, but I don't really want to feel like I'm actively investing for her education, right? So what I did was that I channeled the funds to a portfolio that is just managed by someone else, a robo portfolio, right? And then that just makes me feel more comfortable, right? Because I don't really want to have the stress of thinking about, I just got an ampao, what should I invest, which stock should I invest in? It's not a question I really want to answer, right? So I think it really depends on your preference. I think for insurance endowment plan, there is that structure that there is a structure that it's designed around. So you have to put in that annual premium or that monthly premium over the course of usually at least 10 to 20 years, because the aim is to have that fund at the end of 10 to 20 years, right? So you have to have that commitment, that discipline. You cannot invest for or buy the plan for 5 years and then change your mind, right? So that is something you have to think about. And I think another thing, another realization that I had also, just seeing the question, is that when I had my first kid, I was like, okay, this is all we're gonna do for her and all this thing. Then when the second one came and the third one came, you realize that, to be fair, I need to do the same thing, right? So you have to think of your commitment, especially if you want to have more than one child. You have to think of your commitment as potentially it needs to duplicate, right? So if I'm going to buy an insurance endowment plan, let's say $500 a month, okay, I think I can afford it. But if my second or third come, I need to also feel like that's something I am willing to do. Yeah, so that's something I realized.
Definitely having kids is not like I guess like what's it called? The scale.
The economy of scale.
There's no economies of scale, right? So every kid there's a new.
A bit of economy of scale if you can hand me down books and clothes, but not if you are talking about, tuition or childcare or education. You want no discount if you got 2-3 kids. Just double only.
Do we have any other questions from the audience? One more. Okay, cool. So would you recommend a lump sum investment or monthly investment for retirement?
There's this study that has been done on this question, lump sum versus money, which is better. I believe, and the result is that there's no difference at all. The only difference is your psychological mental well-being, because if you were to lump sum today and the market will suddenly crash like 50% tomorrow, then you'll be like panic and go to search dollars and cents, see what are they saying about this market crash. But if you were to invest a smaller amount, even if the market crash, you have the rest of the money to start dumping in to dollar cost average down. So I would say, would you recommend? I think it depends on yourself whether you can handle market crashes or not. Whether are you confident in your investments? If you're not confident, don't just lump sum everything in. Just throw a bit every day. And now that with trading fees so low, you can afford to do that. And over the long term, both actually give about the same kind of return.
I think it also depends on how you are getting the money, right? So if you're talking about something like investing a portion of your monthly salary each month, then I think it's just natural to just do it on a monthly investment, right? Because you earn this amount every month. Okay, I just put in $200. I don't think there's a need to purposely save up $200 for the whole year, then invest 2,400 suddenly, right? That to me
Trying to time the market.
Yeah, unless you are trying to time the market, which
Yeah.
means you have a view, right, of the market. But if you don't have a view, then it really depends on how you get the money, right? Likewise, if you get a 13-month bonus, a few $1,000s, you don't also have to purposely divide it by 12
Yes.
to invest a bit each month, right? If you want to just put that $3,000 into the market instead of dividing it by 12, you also can do so, right? Unless, like what you say, you have a view of the market, you think it's overvalued or undervalued. Yeah.
Let me maybe flip the question around, right? So that if this is not retirement, but like investing for your child's education, do we think that, should we take kind of similar approaches to that given the longer time horizon? Or do we think that we should be a little bit more consistent?
I would probably say it's pretty similar, right? But again, it depends on your time horizon in terms of, are you, let's say, you are 5 years away from their tertiary education and you do want to send them overseas, etc. or it's going to be, considerable amount, then, you obviously want to take less risk there. So you may want to do it in a more recurring and DCA manner versus lump sum, right? As Kelvin and Tim mentioned, right? You could get unlucky in the markets in that case, right? But if you have a long time horizon, over 10 years, I would say it's a very similar approach, right? Versus retirement or your child's education.
Oh, one more. All right, cool. Would it be considered risky to invest your child's education funds?
It depends on what you are investing in, right? If you're investing in something like Bitcoin, crypto, then maybe probably. So like I said earlier, if you want to reduce the risk, just split your portfolio into like core, satellites, or just if you are totally not confident at all, you can go with like ETF or robo-advisor. Let other people handle your money. Like if you feel that you're not that competent, as risky, I feel like risky. People feel like investing in stocks is risky is because they feel that, oh, if I buy today, it can go down tomorrow. But as long as your investment thesis is sound, then there's not much risk going on, especially if you drive over the long term, right? You will eliminate the volatility risk. So volatility risk is gone over the long term. And as for the fundamental thesis risk, as long as you do the correct research, invest in the right stuff, then I think that risk is also minimized.
Yeah. I think asset allocation, right?
Yeah.
Imagine.
Yeah, I would say, I would also, call out that I would probably argue that it can be also risky not to invest your child's education fund, right? If it's a long way away and we're seeing what's happening, with inflation at the moment, what you think may be enough now may not be enough in 10 years time, etc. Right? So, and if we do look at really, long time horizons, the market will go up, right? If you have that long time horizon. So again, I would kind of link this question back to time horizon, right? If it's 1 year away, maybe not, right? If it's 2 years away, also, that kind of you might want to be a bit more cautious, right? And either you're investing in a very low risk portfolio, you're earning yield, right? For instance, right, more passive income approach. But if you do have a long time horizon, I think it's a similar approach to, as we've spoken about, retirement, etc.
So if you don't mind, maybe like sharing like personally, right? So then what approach have you taken for your own kids?
What do you mean in terms of?
Like whether you DCA or you lump sum.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, that's why I shared just now, right? I don't really think too much about having to choose either DCA or lump sum. For me, it just depends on how the source of fund comes, right? So if let's say like in Singapore, sometimes if you have kid, then they have this cash, what I call it, the baby bonus.
Yeah.
Right. So the baby bonus you get in over a period of, I think now it's 6 years, but previously it was I think 3 years, right? So if it's a Singaporean child, you get that baby bonus from the government, so a couple of $1,000s. So whenever it comes, and if you don't need the money to buy milk diapers, then you can just invest that amount. I wouldn't really recommend. I wouldn't really think about having to like I say, purposely divide by 12 to invest over a year. When her birthday comes and they have ang baos and there's a bit more money, then we can just put it in. If you want to do a DCA, you want to invest a little bit each month from your salary, I think that's also okay. I think I just want to say one more thing. I think obviously you should have, to me, a savings account for each kid as well. So for me, it's not so much of the money goes straight to an investment account. It goes into a savings account first. Then from the savings account, then it might be deployed to any investments that we want to make on their behalf.
Cool. So, yes, I think we're out of questions now. So I think just to maybe wrap up, like closing thoughts, if let's say that, maybe it's one of the audiences, new parents, or maybe they have really young kids, but they haven't really started thinking about investing or even setting up like a savings plan for them yet, what would be kind of like general advice or maybe key takeaways if you kind of want them to take forward?
For me, I think it's like I just feel like it's our responsibility as parents to teach our kids about money, right? Because actually, I think in schools, they don't like there's no like finance modules that children have to go through, right? I know that even the concept of compound interest, even till today, adults sometimes don't even understand it as well, right? They don't know the difference between simple interest and compound interest, right? So I think for me, I think the most important thing I would say is that as parents, it's our responsibility to teach our kids about money, the value of money. So it's not just about how much they spend, but it's also about concepts like saving, emergency funds, or saving for a rainy day, investing, because investing is how your money can grow. And I think also equally importantly, to teach them that not everything is also about money, right? That money is just a means to an end, right? And so they need to see money for what's worth, right? It can't be everything is about money, but they also have to understand how money comes about, right? So like, for example, my kids, they understand so whenever we go to the office, right, because work from home, so when they were a bit younger, because of COVID, we stay at home to work from home, right? So when we started going back to the office, this was, I think 2022, they started asking why we need to go to the office, right? So I try to explain that, you need to go to the office so that you can make money, right? Earn money, earn a salary, yeah, right? And then that is why we have a house, and things like that. My parents live with us, or live very near us. So I always explain to my kids that my parents don't work anymore, because they have retired. They have money because of they have invested in the early days, so they have money, and because of that, then they can stay at home to look after the kids. So I think that is something that to me is important for my children to understand.
So the other, besides money itself, right? As a parent, it's also your job to make sure that you are not a burden to your kid. Like obviously, last time is a way different time where there's not much job opportunities going on, and the parents, the reason they have kids is because they need the kids to work to earn money for the family. But now I think the whole thing has changed. Now that we have given all this opportunity to invest, to earn more money through the internet or whatever. It's our job to make sure that by the time we retire, we are self-sustained, and we don't have to rely on kids, not just financially, but also in terms of health, in terms of time, that we don't go and disturb the kids. Because the kids, by the time they are already grown up, they have their own family, and it will be very helpful that they don't have to worry too much about us. Obviously, they still will come over once in a while or whatever, but that if they don't have to come pay for our expenses, they don't have to bring us to hospital every now and then.
Maybe bring but don't worry about financially
Yeah.
Right? It's still want them to bring, but I think financially they don't have to worry about us.
Yeah. So that's a very important part, because we are right now in this weird phase where we are in the same generation. Then some of us are not in the same generation. I think our job is to make sure, but by the next generation, this whole thing is phased out.
So, I would maybe just to add on that, from my perspective, definitely, of course, hard work, as I mentioned, right, and teaching them, important values around that, right, and I would also say, this concept of starting early, to plan for whatever goals you do have, for your kids, or whatever commitments you think that you may have to make, whether it's a rainy day fund, right, education, as we've spoken, at length about, etc. Because things can be very, daunting, and amounts can be very daunting, when you see them up front and when they're close, when they're nearby. But much less daunting, if you do start to prepare, save and invest early and, make some of those tougher calls around, what can you spend now versus, what you should be thinking about, for the future, right? And that comes into this aspect, around obviously, being financially independent, and helping, your kids keep their options open, and, provide for them in all the ways that you need to.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for your time and your views, Samantha, Kelvin, as well as Tim. It's been great having you on this session, and we don't really do these sort of discussions very often, but I would say that, we would want to probably do it a lot more frequently. So, thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any questions, we also have wealth experts that you can reach out to. Because remember, don't think that this is financial advice. There's always access tools and things like that. So do your research, and everybody's a little bit different. I think that's what we have learned. And then, what you're comfortable with might not necessarily be like someone else's, right? But it's good to kind of start that kind of conversation. And yeah, that's what we kind of hope to kind of accomplish from this session here as well. So do check out Syfe for Kids on our app. You can actually see it right away when you open the app. Do give us a bit of feedback there as well. If you have any, we're happy to hear them as well. So thank you guys again, and have a great evening, everyone.